Welcome to Mindful with Mina, where we explore how mindfulness can enhance your relationships and well being. I'm your host, Mina B., a licensed social worker, mental health educator, and author. Through insightful discussions, I will guide you towards self awareness and self efficacy, empowering you to effectively manage your relationships, reduce burnout, and be more present with yourself. So let's jump into today's episode. What's up, y'all? Today, I want to break down boundaries because over the last few years, boundaries has become a buzzword, and a lot of people are starting to do a lot of work of recognizing the limits that they need to set in order to establish some sense of peace and safety in their own lives. But I'm realizing that a lot of people are conflating rules with boundaries. And I think that because a lot of people are confusing the two, it is leaving folks really frustrated when their rules are violated, but it feels like their boundary is being crossed. And so let's jump right into unpacking the difference between a rule and a boundary. A rule is a set of regulations or guidelines that you enforce on others. However, a boundary is a set of personal regulations or guidelines that you establish for yourself. I want to use a universal example because I believe that boundaries are a societal issue. It is not just an issue that's personal or intergenerational and your parents failed at setting boundaries. Boundaries is a societal problem, at least violating rules and boundaries is a societal problem. And so, to use this universal example, many of us are familiar with traffic laws. So, when you approach a green light while driving, you know it means go. However, if you approach a red light, you know it means to stop. Traffic laws are rules that we must all abide by. But here's the thing there are people who break the law every single day. And why is that? Because people are always going to do what they want to do. And as a result of doing whatever it is that you want to do, in this example, such as running a red light, there is going to be a consequence for that behavior. So, if you run a red light, you will get pulled over. If you have multiple unpaid tickets, your car can be repossessed. If you have too many speeding tickets, your license can be suspended. People face consequences for violating rules every single day. Understand this. Even the law can't stop people from doing illegal things. Therefore, you won't be able to stop people from doing whatever it is that they want to do. This is why it's important to have a clear understanding of your rules versus your boundaries. When someone decides to behave a certain way and violates the rules you've put in place, it will always be your responsibility to uphold your boundaries and decide how you will react when a line is crossed. In the same way, the legal system reacts when people choose to break the law. Your boundary is how you will respond to people when they violate your requests. I'm going to use another very common everyday example. So, I work in the corporate wellness space. And when I'm doing my workshops and I'm talking to employees on different ways that they can set boundaries, a common complaint employees have expressed to me is receiving emails when they're off from work. And it leads them to feeling frustrated. They're telling the other person, please stop emailing me, but the email requests just keep coming in, maybe on a weekend, late at night, during hours that they themselves aren't expected to be working or checking emails. Here's the thing that I am going to keep saying throughout this episode. You cannot control other people's actions. Your rule can be, please do not send me emails after work hours. But guess what? That person can still do what they want to do. And you have to stop believing you are powerless and ask yourself how you will respond to things you do not like that are within your control. So when it comes to emails, instead of getting frustrated repeatedly because a colleague keeps sending you emails at midnight, what would it look like for you to consider muting your notifications, deleting the app from your phone, or even putting your emails on snooze to avoid disruptions during your personal time? That is your boundary. You have control over you. And so, of course, we want people to honor the rules and regulations that we put in place. But we have to ask ourselves, when people don't honor those rules, what are we going to do now to protect our peace? Examples of boundaries can sound like, I will log off from work when my shift is over. Another one could be, I will put my phone on do not disturb when I know I'm busy or I don't want to be bothered. Yeah, I kid you not. My phone is on do not disturb maybe 80% of the day. And I use that honestly as my out of office message for texts. It's like if you text me and you see my phone says do not disturb, I'm busy. Right. And even if you decide to keep ringing my phone or keep sending me text messages, I'm not going to respond because I already made it clear that I am unavailable, and that is why my phone is on do not disturb. Another boundary can sound like, I will remove myself from interactions with people who make me feel unsafe or agitated. I've been in situations, in particularly with family members who have gotten really irate, and my response to that is, if you keep raising your voice at me, I am going to have to end this conversation. If you keep cussing at me, I am going to hang up the phone. So you see, if you do this thing, that is the rule and the guideline I am imposing on the other person. But the boundary is, this is what I am going to do as a consequence to your actions. If you keep doing this thing, this is the consequence that is going to be put in place because you're not going to be talking to me however you feel like it. That is just a very, very strict rule that I have as I move through the world. And so I want you to remember this. Boundaries always start with I, emphasizing your personal agency, while rules always start with you, focusing on the actions of others. Now, here's something to be mindful about when it comes to your boundaries. When a rule is violated, you must act the first time. Because here's the way people's brains work. If I do something and you don't correct me, you don't assert yourself and speak up and let me know that you did not like it, I'm most likely going to keep doing it because you did not inform me that this thing wasn't okay. And so I want you to first recognize that you need to let people know what your rules are. And the next thing is, once you communicate that rule and they continue to behave a certain way, you also have to let them know that this is not going to be tolerated. I already expressed to you that I don't like it when you speak to me this way. I already informed you that when you do this thing, it makes me uncomfortable, and this is going to be my boundary in response. The moment you notice a person starting to violate your rule is when you communicate your boundary, AKA how you will respond if they decide to keep doing the thing that feels like it's crossing a line. And the next thing is, once you've communicated how you will respond, they've already gotten an advanced warning on what will come next if they continue down the same path. So, communicating your boundaries gives someone an opportunity to change course because they recognize the consequences that will follow their actions. If they choose to keep pushing you, then that means they will deal with the repercussions of their actions like every other individual in society who is reprimanded when they do something that violates a guideline. So let this be your reminder that setting a boundary is a social norm. And so I hope you can be brave enough to set the limits that make you feel seen, heard, and safe. Because setting a boundary doesn't make you mean or selfish. It actually makes you quite normal because everywhere we go in life, there is a rule and there is a consequence for breaking rules. So before we wrap, I want to share some reflection questions with you so that you can start getting better with the rules that you set but also the boundaries that you erect with people when those rules are violated. Here's reflection question one. Consider a scenario where you felt frustrated or overwhelmed by someone's actions. How could you establish a boundary to protect your well being in that situation? The key word here is to protect your well being. So that means, what is the boundary that you are going to put in place that you have control over that helps you to protect your well being? Question two. I want you to reflect on a time when you struggled to uphold your boundaries. What were the reasons behind it? And how could you have responded differently? Sometimes we struggle to uphold our boundaries because we feel guilty setting consequences. And so, if that is an example, I want you to think about, how can you learn to reframe guilt so that you can respond differently and you can act the first time when you realize someone is violating your rules. The third question is, I want you to reflect on a situation where someone violated your rules. How did you respond? And what were the consequences? Did you speak up? Did you assert yourself? Did you find yourself overcome by anxiety so you started people pleasing and just let them slide? And if you let them slide, what was the consequence of that? Because honestly, when we keep letting people slide, guess who's frustrated? We are. While they continue to engage in the behavior that makes us upset. So, how can you stop that? And the last reflection question is, I want you to think about a boundary you would like to establish for yourself in a specific area of your life. How would you communicate and reinforce this boundary with others? We can have boundaries around our emotions. We can have physical boundaries, and that could be with our bodies or even in our physical space. So, what is a boundary that you need to communicate, and how are you going to reinforce this boundary? I hope these reflection questions were extremely helpful, but I want to remind you that boundary work is lifetime work. You are not going to always master boundaries in every area of your life because guess what? New things always happen, new forms of adversity show up. And so we are always learning about ourselves. And as we learn about ourselves, we are always learning what our needs are. That's all for today's episode. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed what you just listened to, please take a moment to rate and review this podcast on your preferred platform. Also, don't forget to share it with a friend and on social media. To stay connected with me and my work, follow me on social media and subscribe to the Mindful with Mina newsletter, which can be found on my website, www.minaB.com. You can also continue learning from me by ordering my book, Owning Our Struggles, which is available at all major book retailers. Stay tuned for a new episode next week, and most importantly, remember to be present and stay mindful. Take care and goodbye for now.